One of the most pressing concerns that we have today regarding sustaining our life and future life on Earth is our supply of fresh water. From 1941 to 2011, the world's population tripled, but freshwater consumption quadrupled. Earlier this year, the World Economic Forum ranked freshwater crisis as the top global risk to industry and society over the next decade, not climate change, which was number 2 on their list. It was freshwater crisis, lack of availability. There's a growing gap between worldwide demand for water and what's really available. With so much demand, there's expected to be a 40% shortage in just the next 14 years. What you decide to eat has every single thing to do with this. Scientists are very concerned about water scarcity, but I think it's more a matter of water management, isn't it? Instead of focusing on technologies, we should be first looking at choices. Is this a good choice? How about this choice? Does that look good? Are any of these good choices? All global averages. Are these good choices as compared to, say, these choices? Same global averages. Quite a difference, wouldn't you say? Hey, it requires 400 gallons of water just to slaughter one cow or one pig in the United States. 400 gallons. Although water on Earth remains constant, the consumptive form it happens to be in does not. 4 out of 5 people now live within 30 miles of a water-damaged area, meaning soon to run out or polluted. There are nearly 300 transboundary river and waterways on Earth where multiple countries share vital running water supply. As we see water shortages over the next 14 years, we will surely see droughts, famine, human sickness, and then we're going to see conflicts, social unrest, mass migrations, and even wars. Indeed, those living downstream will be fiercely battling those living upstream for their water rights. Climate change will make these matters worse, but not cause them. Food choice and virtual water trading through food, especially with water-intensive animal products, will play a much larger role than energy or fossil fuel use. In many areas of the world, freshwater scarcity coexists with hunger and poverty. Afghanistan, Sudan, Saudi Arabia are raising livestock and crops to feed them while running their water supplies dry. 60% of Ethiopia's population suffers from hunger and thirst, and yet their dehydrated land is being used to support a growing herd of over 50 million cattle, the largest in Africa. Syria, as we all know, is desperately in need of a number of things, aren't they? They're in need of freshwater supplies for their thirsty 18 million humans. But at the same time, they're attempting to provide water for 47 million cattle, sheep, and goats. And so it is with Pakistan, Mongolia, Russia, China, India, nearly every country in the world struggling with an increasing human population, dwindling natural resources, and being strangled by their meat and dairy culture. So that has to include the country of California and the Southwest United States. Regarding fresh water, and despite the recent effects of El Nino, things aren't going so well in California, are they? But have they given thought to where most of the water supply is going? It's not to golf courses, and most of it's not to lawn care. Between 60 and 70% of the total consumptive water usage in California goes to livestock and crops to feed them. You know, being concerned and showing graphs of precipitation levels won't solve California's problem. The government mandate of a 25% cut in water use this past year won't solve much either, because California hasn't factored in the water footprint of what they're eating. As an example, California uses 900,000 acres of land to produce alfalfa. Anyone here from California? Why do you do that? No. Why do you do that? Because each one of those 900,000 acres of alfalfa require 1 to 2 million gallons of water per year to irrigate. And they all get irrigated, every one of those acres. And guess where all that alfalfa goes? It goes to livestock. 5% to horses, the rest to livestock. 75% go to dairy cows. And there are 1.8 million dairy cows just in California. This brings up the point of virtual water footprint, which is going to be more and more relevant in the future as freshwater supplies globally shrink. It's how much water is used to produce a certain good, and then it's shipped somewhere else, so that water is essentially lost or exported. Our virtual water footprint in this instance is where we're extracting massive amounts of water from ancient aquifers that took 50,000 or more years to develop. We're using that water to produce alfalfa or other feed crops that are then being exported to other countries. California alone is exporting 100 billion gallons of fresh water per year just to China via hay to help feed China's 17 million cattle. China is quickly closing in on, they're only in third place. China is quickly closing in on Japan and United Arab Emirates as the leading importers of our hay and therefore our fresh water. These countries are running out of land, and they're also running out of fresh water. They know, they've learned, that it's not wise to use their precious drinking water to produce hay for cattle. So they might as well get it from the United States because we don't know any better. We haven't got that figured out. In all, United States exports to other countries more than 80 trillion gallons of virtual water per year, which is 2 times more than what's being exported by any other country in the world. The vast majority of this water, make no mistake, is tied up in livestock or in feed crops that are then shipped to livestock overseas. Using less water to brush our teeth, flush toilets, or do laundry, or less time in the shower will save 2 gallons of water per day for each act. That's important. However, eliminating meat and dairy from one's diet will save on average over 1,000 gallons of water per person every day. If California stopped growing alfalfa for livestock just for 1 year, just stop growing alfalfa for 1 year, stop using that water, the amount of water saved that 1 year would be enough to provide drinking water to the entire human population of the city of San Francisco. Not for 1 year, every year for the next 66 years. The average household in the United States uses 50,000 gallons of water in 1 year, according to the EPA. Indoor use, about the same outdoors. It's quite a bit of water, and it's what we're focused on in times of drought, how to reduce this. The average person in the United States, though, consumes about 200 pounds of meat in 1 year, divided between 46 pounds of pig, 58 pounds of cow, 102 pounds of chicken and turkey, in addition to the 248 eggs and 616 pounds of dairy products, which equates to 405,000 gallons of water per person per year just to support that animal product diet. So now a more accurate view that the EPA should be broadcasting and we should all be aware of is that every household of 3 people in the United States, well, they use over 1 million gallons of water each year. Not 50,000, 1.2 million gallons. And 96% of that outrageous water use is from their choice to eat animals. So whenever there's a drought or a water shortage anywhere in the United States, which there are and there will be, does our government or your community ever step up and declare a state of rationing or eliminating meat or dairy? Well, why not? Why shouldn't they? This year, one of the largest desalination plants in the world opened near San Diego. It cost $1 billion, and it provides drinking water for 10% of the human population of that area. There's about a 2-to-1 ratio of seawater, ocean water, coming in and then being desalinated and then going out for drinking water. The energy required to produce this water in this manner each day is enough to support the needs of 30,000 homes. This approach to freshwater scarcity is very similar to Australia, what I've seen in Israel and Saudi Arabia, and in other arid coastal countries around the world. But the answer to our running out of a natural resource, such as fresh water, shouldn't begin by turning to another source of water and then tapping that out as well. It seems logically that the right way to approach our natural resources is to use them in the most efficient manner possible. Instead of desalination, for instance, San Diego should have considered spending $1 billion on educating their citizens and policymakers on the environmental benefits of eliminating meat and dairy and fish from their diets. Among all the other benefits, then they would have liberated between 50 and 90% more water each day, rather than the meager 10% gained by way of sucking water from our oceans. Thank you. Yeah, no question. We're going to be talking more about our oceans and also about policymaking tomorrow. We'll get a little bit more into this at that time. This is no different than the plan to pipe water from Lake Michigan in the 1980s to Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Texas, in the Corn Belt, where it was discovered that the Ogallala Aquifer, another ancient aquifer with water that's over 50,000 years old, it was drying up from irrigating all the livestock and crops to feed them in the Corn Belt. Well, we're running out of water in the Corn Belt to feed livestock, so let's just build another pipeline to Michigan and then drain all the water out of the Great Lakes. I never once considered simply to stop eating animals. Problem solved. No pipe. Recent satellite studies called GRACE, the acronym for Gravity, Recovery, and Climate Experiment, has shown that 40% of the largest aquifers on Earth, 40% are being overdrawn unsustainably and are becoming rapidly and irreversibly depleted in our lifetime. California's Central Valley Aquifer is one of those. And also the southern portion of the Ogallala we just talked about in the High Plains states. They're two of the most at-risk ancient aquifers in the world of being entirely depleted in the next few decades. Others in significant trouble can be found in India, the northern plains of China, a couple of them in the Middle East. And while some of the problem can be blamed on rice and wheat, most of the ancient water depletion that's being used in these regions most of it's going to livestock and crops to feed them. As an example, earlier this year, among other locations in the world, 2,000 water wells dried up in Tulare County, California. These wells didn't dry up because of climate change. No. Tulare happens to be the leading county in the United States for dairy production. That's where all the water went to produce cow's milk. It's also one of the most polluted counties in the country. Cow's milk is produced at a ratio of 1,000 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. Well water levels in the southern high plains states, such as Texas and Oklahoma that we just talked about, have dropped by more than 100 feet during the last few years. Nevertheless, that area is still being used to support some of the heaviest concentrations of beef cattle. In terms of raw numbers, livestock consume 34 trillion gallons of fresh water each year in the United States alone. 34 trillion gallons. I repeat myself once in a while because the numbers are astounding to me, even though I see these every single day. They use this much water by way of drinking water and water to grow crops to feed them. A number of scientists have questioned and vetted some of my numbers over the years, like this one. And I'm quite used to it, no problem. These type of numbers are buried, very often, they're buried within other data. Often have to be teased out of other research because nobody's looking for them. They have to be extrapolated and then verified. It's a bit tedious, and the results are incriminating for those industries involved. I mean, let's face it, information like this puts the meat and dairy industries on trial. What researcher wants to do that? Well, I don't mind. I don't mind at all. Thank you. So typically, I provide any arguing scientist, which there are a few, I provide any arguing scientist with all my data and all my computations, like what you see on the screen here, and then I say to them, there you go, do the computations yourself, have at it. And after they do, my hope, and many of them have, is that they stop eating animals too, and then spread the word scientifically, because they've all found out over the years that my numbers like these are actually on the conservative side. So the question remains, even though we experience periods of less precipitation, less water available, is this a drought that we're witnessing in California and the problem that we should be concerned about and across the rest of the United States and the Southwest and also in the Middle East and other areas of the world? Or is it more of a problem of misuse of our freshwater resources that are available at any one particular point in time? Maybe that's the way we should start viewing this issue. So then these are the timelines for fresh water. And it's really not anything we can feel comfortable with. The NRDC predicts that 1/3 of all counties in the United States, that's over 1,100 counties spanning 14 states, will face water shortages by the year 2050, with more than 400 counties being at extremely high risk.